Well, hey, welcome to the Christian Music Mentor Podcast. We're so glad you're here with us today. I'm really excited about our guest for today that you're going to love listening to. His name's Corey Voss. He's a Tennessee-based worship leader, songwriter, amazing person, also just in general, man of God. And he's got amazing songs that he's been a part of writing, such as Let There Be Wonder, Matt Redman, Praise the King, Jesse Velasquez, and then a whole bunch of other ones, and also fan favorite, I Got Saved by Selah, which was super fun. And I got to see that song kind of develop from its initial form out to what it is today. And he's also written with some of the top people in the music industry and just an amazing worship leader. And, aside from accolades, an amazing songwriter, just an awesome person. So I think you're going to get a lot out of our interview today. And I know many of you listening are worship leaders, independent artists, and songwriters. So you're going to really connect with Corey today. So hey, Corey, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Brad. I'm really excited to be here with you. I appreciate all the kind words, man. You're also an awesome dude, and I'm excited to be able to interview with you today.
Yeah, it's good. It's going to be awesome. So, a lot of what we do in these interviews is really help encourage, inspire, but also challenge, aspiring singer-songwriters, artists, worship leaders, and really help them navigate the kind of awkward process of being an artist and songwriter who wants to put themselves out there, but also loving Jesus and not wanting to be prideful and arrogant and how to do it in like a kingdom way. And so I'd love to mine a bit of your journey and just start out with, how you started out. Were you someone who grew up in a Christian home, or did you come to Christ later? How did the spiritual side of your journey kind of happen? Let's say from, in high school or just kind of starting out in life.
Yeah. My journey, honestly, I grew up in the Catholic Church. My mom took me and my brothers to church every Sunday, and I grew up in that environment, but I didn't have my own relationship with Jesus until I was 15. And I had just a really profound, honestly, like a life-changing encounter with him when I was 15. A friend of mine shared their testimony with me, and I was going through some hard things at that time in my like teenage years, and I gave my heart to Jesus that day. And it was literally like I knew, like I was like, I know I'm different. I know that God has touched my heart, and that was the day that I got saved. So yeah, it's man, that was beautiful, and that kind of kickstarted my journey with the Lord. And I think I just felt so much gratitude for how He had changed my heart, and like that I was like, I want to do something for the Lord. Then I felt like over the next year, I started to feel Him calling me to ministry, that I was going to do ministry at some point. So yeah, I ended up like leading worship. I found a church in my hometown. I'm from Michigan City, Indiana, way up there near Chicago. And I found a church up there. When I got to that church, didn't know that it was the church my grandfather grew up as an Assembly of God. I had no idea because he converted to Catholicism later on in his life, and he just never mentioned that. And I randomly went to this church because I'm like, oh, I'll try this church. And that ended up being the church where I just grew as a worship leader. And I ended up going off to college in Florida and studied at Southeastern University church ministries and got involved in a church down there. And so, yeah, my journey, but spiritually, it was like, in those high school years, it was like, those were very formative for me because you don't know, like, you don't have any connections, you're not doing anything like in the music industry or anything like that. I just had my heart for the church and my heart for the presence of God. And I was so impacted at the church that I started going to by the ministry there. And I will say this, that I feel like combined with being involved in my church and growing there, a lot of my growth spiritually happened alone, like at the piano, like just, I guess, as a worship leader and finding my voice that way. And I would print out all these chord charts from like Matt Redman songs and, Hillsong and all this stuff. And I'd like learn all these worship songs on the piano at home and just pour out my heart to the Lord. And I guess that was kind of where I discovered like how to find God on your own or like alone,
Yeah.
outside of a church service. And so, yeah, and it was definitely like, in my family, like I think my family, like at first, I think they thought I was a little bit like overzealous about everything because I was just so excited about what Jesus, was doing in my heart and in my life and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, that's a bit of the journey, I guess. And, throughout college, like I've always, throughout my journey, I've always felt this pull from the Holy Spirit to just keep pursuing, to keep going, to like just keep taking ground, and grow in my call, grow in the ministry of songwriting and all of that.
Yeah, that's so good. And with piano, did you start taking lessons in classically, or did you just play it? Like, how did your piano process
I
develop?
did. Yeah, I started taking lessons. So my neighbor down the street, my parents bought my brothers and I a piano when we were really small. And so I'd always like tinker around on it. And then when I turned 7, my brother started taking lessons. And then I realized that I wanted to be cool like him. And so I was like, Mom, I want to take lessons. So all 3 of me and my brothers, we all got in piano lessons. And I was not good at it, honestly. Like I struggled to read sheet music. I struggled to like, it just was a very slow process for me, but I could play by ear and I could
Mm.
like pick out the notes and the chords really easily. And so, yeah, that I guess over time, like the classical training side of it wasn't really my strong uh, suit, but you know, playing by ear and learning chords worked out really well, especially for worship leading. You can read a chord chart and
Totally.
that kind of thing. I took lessons for till I was 16. So
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. That's similar to me. I learned classical growing up and then got put in a worship band where they give you a chord chart. And I'm like, what do I
Hmm.
do with this?
Right.
How do I play that? You just have to
Right.
figure it out.
You have to improvise. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so songwriting wise, do you remember when you first started to write something original? Like how did that come about?
Yeah. I just had this like this honestly this like burning desire in my heart to write just one worship song. I was like, I just want to write one that's good, one that's like can be sung in church or in chapel at my college. And I was in college at the time, and a lot of my friends on the worship team that I traveled with one of the worship teams at school, and one of my friends was a very amazing songwriter, and he was leading the songs that he wrote in chapel. And I remember like just experiencing the presence of God in such a unique way through his songwriting. And it just inspired me. And I kept thinking, I want to write, I want to write songs for the church. And this desire in me it just grew so strong. And I was sitting in a class one day at my school, and it was a class on church history or something. And I was zoning out, and the Lord gave me a song idea. And I heard this melody and this chorus idea. And then I didn't even like have a keyboard in my dorm at that time. And I borrowed a guitar from a friend and started trying to learn. And I locked myself away in my dorm and was like, I'm writing a song. We're doing it. And so I did that, and I ended up like showing it to my friend who was one of the worship leaders there. And he was like, man, that's really cool. I think you should tweak it a little bit and, do some stuff to it. And then I ended up leading it one time in like a small setting, and people were like, what is that song? And I was like, oh, I wrote it. And then I ended up getting to lead it in like a chapel service at school. And within like a few weeks, other people were leading that song, which was crazy. I was like, wait a minute, this is cool. Like, and I started to get courage, and like encouragement about it, thinking like, wow, I really feel like God's calling me to grow as a songwriter. And yeah, so that was kind of how the songwriting journey started. But it was really a few more years before I would write little snippets of songs, but it took me a while to like complete songs, and I wasn't
Yeah,
co-writing yet. So
that's cool. And how did you connect into Nashville from Indiana? How did that process happen?
yeah, it was weird because I went to school in Florida and then worked at a church down there. And after like when that season was kind of coming to a close, I connected with this guy at my church that plays drums, and he asked me if I wanted to be in like a worship band that traveled and all of that. And I at the time I hadn't even thought of it. I was like, oh, I just thought I'd work in the church and stay as a worship leader somewhere. And he kind of challenged me. He's like, man, your songs are great, and I think you need to like do something with it. And so we started a band and recorded some demos, and he sent all of our demos to like managers and labels in Nashville, and I didn't know it. he was just doing stuff, and I was like, oh. And meanwhile we were kind of like leading worship at different churches in Florida and starting to travel and that kind of thing. So through that, I got connected with a management company in Nashville, and not long after that, I ended up signing. That was when I got involved with Centricity in Franklin and started working with them in centric worship.
Okay, cool. And then did you move here at that point?
Yes, I didn't mention that. I did. My aunt and uncle, have some family in Shelbyville, Tennessee, which is like an hour from Nashville, and I was coming up to Nashville to write songs, because I was getting connected and all of that, and I was traveling from Florida to Nashville a lot, and they were like, "Why don't you just come live with us, and
Mhm.
you can, you'll be closer to town and all of that." So I moved up here and lived with them for a short time.
And so how did you find when you first started coming to Nashville and first got connected? Did you find it very comfortable? Was it overwhelming, intimidating? What kind of feelings or perspective did you have when you first started coming to town?
Yeah, it was definitely like overwhelming at first because it's like when you see other people, I was getting thrown into co-writes with people I had never met, and just learning like that co-writing is like very much the culture of Nashville, right? So like you get in a room with one or two or three other people and you have to get on the same page with them and share your heart and write a song. And that's like, I'm kind of introverted as a person naturally. So it's like it stretches you and it pushes you out of your comfort zone. But it's also just extremely rewarding when you get to create something with other people and like you feel the Lord is breathing on it and you're part of something bigger, than just you. And I love that
Mhm.
aspect of it. And it was nerve-wracking at first, but like the more I got into it, the more that I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. This feels like the right thing, the right path. And songwriting is a muscle too. Like the more you work it and define it and build it, the stronger you get. And so it was
That's
it
awesome.
was it was stretching though, I will say that.
Yeah. And obviously you've written a lot of great songs. Do you have a favorite song or one that just stands out as like this one's really special in my mind, some one that I've created?
Yeah. It's funny because like you have like the songs that other people love, and I definitely love songs like I Got Saved and Praise the King. Those are like up there, but I think probably Praise Your Name is, if I had to pick one of my songs that I'm like, oh, this one feels really dear to my heart, and like my probably my favorite, that would be it. So
Yeah, that's cool. And you also, I mean, you're big into ministry, obviously. You have a great heart and you've been involved, I think, on staff different places, different times. And how do you manage, being a worship artist and songwriter as well as, being very committed to the local church?
yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, it was always like at times it was a bit of a struggle for me because my heart and my loyalty to like whatever ministry or church I'm working with, my heart is to be all in, and to like bridge the gap, I guess, between like, okay, here's my artistry and my songwriting, but how can I like tailor that to serve my pastor and the church that I'm in, and I always like lean towards that. But then there's also this other side of me as an artist that's like, well, I have some things that I want to say or things that I want to express that don't always fit the Sunday morning corporate worship vertical vibe. So it's like it's kind of just like treading that line carefully with honor and loyalty, but also recognizing that like, as an artist, like you also have to like honor your own heart too, and you have to honor the gift that's inside of you and steward that well. And like I think how like in the scripture like Jesus says like love God with your all your strength, all your heart, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. There's like this message within like if you don't like love yourself and take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to like love other people in your church well. And so it
Mhm.
seems selfish sometimes in my mind. It's like, oh, if I'm taking care of myself first, is that selfish? And it's like, no, it's actually like the best thing you can do because then you're able to like really serve other people around you. And so for me, it's like honoring that part of my heart. I'm a big journaler. I love to journal. It keeps me grounded. It helps me get my ideas and my prayers out. And it's a place that I find that it's like, okay, if I can't say this, in a worship song for Sunday morning, I can say it right here in my journal and write it into something, or maybe write it into a personal worship song later. So
That's so cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Journaling is important, even just for like listening and processing. I'm a very internal processor, so I love to journal. Just be like, what am I actually thinking
Mm,
right now?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
cool.
That.
So let's talk some highs and lows. So this question, I've actually never done it, but I might make this a regular thing. I'd love to hear in terms of your music or worship leading or something, like one of the high experiences where you're like, this was awesome, whether it's just something you experienced personally or a moment of impact that you saw, and then like, a low point where, okay, this was a tough season for me, something that happened creatively or a songwriting thing. So let's start with a positive, a high, or I mean, you can share two if you want, whatever. But what's something when you think of like this is a cool mountaintop experience that I experienced, as either a worship leader, artist, or songwriter?
Yeah, I think for me, a mountaintop experience, I mean, there've been definitely a couple of them where I'm like, what is going on right now? This is just way too incredible. The Lord is just blowing my mind. And I think one of those that comes to mind right away is like the experience of getting to like record a live worship record with your church and with like people that you love and your team, and like being able to like do that together and like see what God is going to do through it. And I think there's something so thrilling about that and exciting because it's bigger than you, but you also realize like all the hard work that you've done writing and praying and seeking the Lord gets like funneled into this like big moment, right? Where it's like, okay, now we hit record and we go. And like I love that. Those moments feel like mountaintop moments because you work so hard leading up to it. And then when you get there, it's like, whoa, here we are, we're doing this. And
Yeah,
I think gathering with God's people and having a moment together like that to me is just amazing and so fulfilling and huge. So
yeah. I'd love to talk more about that because I think a lot of people would love to do a live worship experience, and it is, even on the industry side of things, a very popular way to showcase your songs and to really help people encounter the Lord through the experience. So if someone's thinking like, I love to do even just one song with my church or a 5 song live experience, what are some things you'd recommend for getting that process started?
yeah, I think, I mean, obviously the technical side of it is you need to have like, and most churches have live stream capabilities now, like, and someone mixing their stream and like all of that, or a way to record. And I think it's just like if you are writing songs and you're trying them out on Sunday morning at your church and they're going well, like, and I mean most of the time people are already tracking, for live stream and all that. So it's like I would say just track, and see what happens. And like, you know, if there's a moment that happened in the service that just was profound and it feels like it needs to be shared, that's a great place to start. But then if you want to be really intentional about it, like as you grow in that, like then it's like, okay, we want to record an EP. So you start taking the steps, necessary to do that. And, whether there's a producer or like an engineer in your church that you can work with, or finding a producer that if you want to have it mixed and mastered and all of that. Yeah, there's steps, technical steps in that process, but I think
Yes.
starting with what you have is really important, and not feeling that sense of like, oh, we don't have all the fancy things that this church down the road has, but start with what, even if it's like, hey, let's get on our iPhones and create an acoustic version of this song to share. Like that's
Yeah,
a beautiful way to start too. It doesn't have to be this fancy, thing. So
totally. Yeah, that's so good. All right, so that's one of the highs. Let's talk about a low. Is there a time where you had a discouraging season in your songwriting journey or ministry or something? Just whatever kind of comes to mind.
yeah, totally. I think I'm definitely like, as most creatives are, we can be very emotional, and like the spectrum of like being excited but then also feeling like things are not going how you want. And like kind of like David in the scripture where like he's like crying out and complaining to God, like, this is ridiculous, what's going on? But then he has these amazing mountaintop moments too. I think for me, like a lot of that for me has just been like when you like write a song that you're excited about, and other like your publishers or other people are not excited about it, and then you're like, man, I really feel that I want to do something with this. That could be discouraging. But then also seasons of, I guess, like writer's block is what I would call it, or like when you just don't feel inspired and your heart is having a hard time connecting. And for me, it's like that's typically like when I recognize, like, okay, I think I need to pay attention to what's going on in my heart right now, and like address things that I'm going through personally, and like look inward and invite the Lord into that. So yeah, I think that like sometimes there just are those seasons where things aren't moving as fast as you want them to move, and things aren't, and you're not necessarily getting the opportunities that you want, or like the connections that you feel like God is, gonna let you have at some point. And comparison too. That's another, like they always say, comparison is the thief of joy, and it's really true, especially with social media. That's a pit that is easy to fall into. And I, like, over the last couple of years, I realized like I have caused myself so much inner turmoil by like comparing myself on social media to other people in my field, or like, in ministry. And like I've really like worked a lot through that to like keep myself from getting into that place, but to really like recognize I'm right where I'm supposed to be, that the Lord is walking with me every step of the way, and like what he has for me is, I'm not going to miss it, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that's so good. And yeah, just give people like a realistic view at how many songs get used. Like, so out of songs you write, I don't know if you have a general percentage, or how many would you say you actually record or someone actually records, and how many are just kind of offerings of creativity that end up coming out?
Oh, that's, yeah, it's like, I'm trying to think if I should probably like do a ratio or something, or like find out what the conversion rate is, right?
The
No, I
conversion rate.
I think I think that, for every, like, I find that for like when I do a record, like it's like for every like 40 to 50 songs you write, like five or six of them, or maybe more, maybe 10 get put on a project.
Yeah,
But then it's like that can vary, and sometimes a song is like not meant for a project, but maybe it's meant just for you, or maybe it's meant for just to teach you, and then I had to learn this over the years, is like I see the songs that are not like after you write it and you're like, yeah, that's good, but it's not like it's not standing out. I see those songs as like stepping stones, and like part of the journey, and that better songs will come. And it's like you got to keep trying, you got to keep creating, and you're not going to like hit a home run every time, and that's okay. And the perfectionist in
yeah,
me wants to, but
yes,
yeah.
yeah, the whole growth process. That's
Hmm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, for the person who's listening, who's maybe starting out, or, they're not in Nashville, obviously a lot of people aren't, and they're just wanting to grow as a writer, get better. What kind of advice would you give them in their journey of where they're at right now?
Yeah, I would say like do what you can to like keep practicing and keep writing on your own. But I think surrounding yourself and reaching out, like social media is such a powerful place because you can connect with people and reach out, and like Google, like go and find songwriter conferences, songwriter courses, like do what you can to resource yourself, to grow in that area. Even like find books that like talk about growing in songwriting. I know, uh, like I've found a couple of books that have really helped me a lot, over the last year and a half, 2 years. And yeah, I think that's a huge part, resourcing yourself and
Yeah,
connecting with people on social media.
cool. Okay, and then record label wise, nowadays, when would you suggest people pursue a record label deal? And just what do you think about today's like record label stuff? Do you think it's
Mm.
important, or how do you think people should approach that?
Yeah, I think it just depends on if it's right for somebody or not. Like, I've done it a couple times with different labels, and it's always exciting because it's like, all right, you have a team, you have partners around you. But then there's this other side of the coin where it's like maybe that won't or doesn't work for everybody. And there's so much power in like the tools that are in front of us, like, and it's really like with Instagram reels and TikTok and YouTube, like it's all of that, it's very like kind of not easy, but it's like it's easier to get started, and to like kind of be an indie artist. So I would say like a label comes into the picture, I think, when you really feel like that partnership is right, and it's the right team and the right opportunity for you, and it seems to fit where you're at in your journey. I think that a lot of times as everyone aspires, because it's a beautiful experience to be with a label, and everyone aspires to that in their minds, I think. But it's also like, is that always the right fit? And sometimes you get into a deal and you realize like partway through, like, okay, this isn't necessarily going how you thought it would. And that's okay. Like that's the business side of it, I think, which is part of music and ministry and all of that. So yeah, I would say like, just if God calls you to it and if it's the right team and the right fit, that's how I see the label situation.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, cool. Well, last question is deeper question. So, how in the midst of even just ministry in general, ministry, songwriting, music industry, all these things, what are some grounding tools you have or some practices that can really keep you centered and grounded? And I mean, anybody in any industry can get tempted or veer off, and our hearts are fickle things. But what are some ways that you found really help you stay fruitful, or stay Christ-like in the midst of it all?
Yeah, I think just having like a consistent like prayer life is really important. Like, and I think that for me, like sometimes prayer is actually listening. I'm not always just blabbing to the Lord, but like listening and being still. That's really a huge like thing for me. Like I'm a person that like sometimes I have seasons where like anxiety tries to really get at me. And I find that like being still like with the Lord is a huge thing for me. And like I think too, like having those people in your inner circle like that you can call up and really just be your authentic real, like we should have those 2 or 3 people in our lives that we can be like transparent with, and we can say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what's really going on in my heart right now. And like people that
Mhm.
love the Lord, people that want the best for you, and that like are going to like listen and encourage and challenge you as well. We need those people in our life. Yeah, being connected with your church, like that's huge. Yeah, I think reading is a big deal. That's something that's like kept me grounded, is like one, obviously like reading the word, but also reading other books that like help you grow, in the area of your ministry and your heart, just as a person. So yeah, and then I think also like something that I've been passionate about in this last season of my life, is like mental and emotional health, and recognizing that there's like no shame in like if you need to seek therapy or counseling for something you've gone through or you are walking through, that there's nothing wrong with that, that's actually like very helpful for your relationships and for your future. And I'm excited that it seems like there's like kind of a big explosion of like the church talking more about that,
Yeah.
and encouraging people to take care of their mind and heart, and really work
Mhm.
through whatever's going on in their life. So
Totally.
yeah.
That's so good. And you've got a project coming out. You got a single coming out very
Hmm.
soon. Let's talk about that for a little bit too. Um, Tell us maybe the heart of the project, and then the single that's coming out. Just let us know a bit of that, maybe a bit about that song, the heart behind it, and
Hmm.
when we can expect all those things.
Yeah, the heart of the project is honestly, after the last 2 years, and like in 2020, it's like obviously everybody went through some really hard things, and the world is just, it's crazy, right? And like on a personal level, like there were a lot of losses in my life in that year, and I lost a couple of family members, and like just a lot of change, a lot of transition in a short period of time, and it was really overwhelming. And so I kind of pulled back and like was like, Lord, I want to worship through this, and I want to write through this, because this is impacting me on a very deep level. And so the project that I started is a worship album that is personal, and it's kind of the story of like what I've walked through in grief and in loss and change and all of that. And my heart through it is like, I know that I'm not the only one that's like, of course, like that's going through hard things. And I think that I wanted to provide a worship album that would bring comfort and encouragement and hope to people that are processing everything that's happened, and that, like, just a safe place, I think. And so the first single on the project is called Hold On, and it comes out on the 22nd of this month, so a week from today. And I'm really excited about that song because it's like it's a prayer from my heart to the Lord in the middle of a dark season. I was really just crying out to him, asking him to still my heart and I needed to hear him speak back to me about what I was walking through. And what I felt like he was saying is, Corey, you just need to hold on. You're going to make it through this experience. I'm going to walk you
Mm.
through it. You're going to everything's going to be fine. Like, don't fret, don't worry, just
Yeah.
keep walking forward. And so that was kind of the heart behind that song. And it started out as like a little just like piano demo. And I thought, oh, we'll just add some cello and make it really pretty. And then the more I was thinking about it, I was like, this feels like a journey, like you're walking, there's forward motion type song. And so we ended up producing it out a lot differently than that. It's got a lot of like synth lead lines and like some pop vibes to it. So anyways, yeah, I'm excited about that song, and it comes out a week from today. And then there's an EP. So I'm splitting the record up into 3 EPs. And the first one comes out May 20th. That hasn't been officially announced yet, but I'll share it. And yeah, there'll be 3 songs and an instrumental track on that first EP.
Cool. Amazing. That's awesome. And are you saving the title of the EP, or can you share that yet?
I'm trying to remember if I shared it. I didn't share it yet. So,
Okay, you don't have to
so
say that. It'll
I'm
be a
saving it
surprise.
for right now, but soon and very
That's
soon
cool.
it
Hold
will be
on. We'll hold
announced.
on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. So for anyone who wants to check out your music or connect with you, where are the best places to find or follow you?
Yeah, I'm on all the social platforms. So follow me on Instagram at Corey Voss. I'm on TikTok at Corey Voss Music. My website, CoreyVoss.com. YouTube, just type in Corey Voss. You'll find me there. Trying to think of what else. I just got back on Twitter. I deleted my Twitter.
Yeah,
Like,
Twitter. I don't know about Twitter right now.
I
It's
know,
like,
right? And I was like, I guess I probably should, be spread out everywhere. But yeah, anyways. So anywhere you look, I'm probably on there. So
perfect. Cool. Well, thanks for being
uh,
with us today. Share your story, man.
yeah,
Appreciate you. And
absolutely.
all the best with the release.
Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate it. Thanks for interviewing me.
No worries. God bless, man.